Alright, hey guys, it's Jade back with another video, and today we are continuing our 50 State Cryptid series again, and I am super excited today. I had so much fun researching. Today we are looking at the Rougarou from Louisiana, so I hope you guys are excited, and without further ado, because I'm very excited, let's get right into the video. Sorry about the glare that was on my glasses. I don't know why. I turned on another light to make it less noticeable, but anyways. So, the Rougarou. I spent a long time, doing research because this is such a big, cryptid that a lot of people know about. So, a lot of this info is put together from, I think, 4 or 5 different articles, websites. Yes, so let's get into some basic information. So the Rougarou is often compared to like a werewolf. A lot of people say he's half man, half werewolf. But other people say he's just like a werewolf type of thing. But it kind of depends on who you're hearing the story from. But people can agree that he's either part man or he was a man before he was turned into a Rougarou. And the descriptions kind of vary, but people often describe him as having a very large head, and they usually say that he has fiery looking eyes. Some say that they glow in the dark. He has incredibly sharp teeth and matted dark fur. It's usually either described as black or brown, somewhere in there. Very dark. Some people say that he has a human-like face with a snout, but other people say that his face just looks like a wolf and is completely covered in fur. And then he is described as being 7 to 8 feet tall and is from Cajun County, Kentucky. He's often sighted around like New Orleans and Acadiana. I hope I'm saying that right. But we'll get into this later. But the Rougarou originated, people think, from France, because they have a similar story about the loup-garou, which has been, the stories of him have been going around since the 15th, 16th century. So, yeah, that's a little bit of basic information about what he looks like, where he's from. But now we're going to get into why he's doing what he does, because obviously he hurts people. Usually, that is how people describe him. But a lot of, all of the accounts that I read say that he hunts people because of the curse that he has. Somebody has cursed him, and he's searching for somebody to take his curse so he can pass it on and turn back into a full human. So, basically, the curse says that he must draw blood, not kill. He has to just draw blood and injure somebody in order to pass it on to them, pass on the curse of being a Rougarou. A lot of people say that if you look into his eyes, he, like, captures your soul somehow, and then he's able to transfer the curse that way. All depends on the account. People also say that if you survive, you must not speak of the encounter, for 1 year and a day. So, or else the curse will come back, and then you'll have to pass it on again. That account was kind of weird, but yeah, that's what one of them said, that you have to not talk about it for 1 year and a day. Some people say that, silver repels them. Yeah, I didn't find a lot about that, but, one of the articles said that silver will repel them, and they don't like touching silver. People also say that you should put, like, it has to be 13 of something, 13 of an object. A lot of the accounts said pennies. And then this will confuse the Rougarou because they apparently cannot count over 12. They just, like, forget how to count over 12. Some people were saying it's because, of the 12 hours, like, you have, like, 1 to 12 o'clock. So it's like that cycle, so he just doesn't go to 13. That's what some people say. And then the confusion just, some people said that the confusion hurts the Rougarou and then turns it back into a human somehow. And, but then other accounts said that the confusion, like, he just stays confused and is like, how do I count this? Like, I don't know how to count up to 13. And then it just keeps him occupied. And then when the sun comes up, he's like, oh, wait, I gotta go. I don't want to be sighted. And then, another account said that if the Rougarou has been a Rougarou for 101 days after being transformed, then he can go about biting or hurting another human, so he can turn back into a human, but he has to wait 101 days. That was an interesting one. And then another one said that they hunt down Catholics who don't follow Lent. Specifically, like, they specifically hunt Catholics and just, like, leave other people alone, if they're not following Lent, which there is a connection to that later in the history part of the video, which we will get into. And then, a lot of the accounts said that the origins of the curse came from a voodoo priest, in Louisiana, but, that's the one thing that a lot of them agreed on, was that it was voodoo magic that caused the curse, of the Rougarou. So, yeah, but, basically, a lot of, we're gonna go into a little bit of the history now, but, a lot of this has been thought to, have come from France. A lot of, French immigrants live in the Louisiana area, apparently, and the, loup-garou, I'll put the spelling on the screen because it's French and I don't know, some French words are weird. No offense if you're French, but your words are weird. But yeah, it's pronounced loup-garou, and that word has been found in a lot of French literature. And the first use of the name, in literature, like written down, was in the early 19th century, in a poem by Joseph, I'm gonna butcher this name, Bouchetti, where he had used the word loup-garou. That's where it was first seen written down, but the legend it goes back to 15th or 16th century. So, as I said, Louisiana culture is heavily influenced by France, and the Acadians from French were exiled, and then they moved to Nova Scotia. And then from Nova Scotia, they moved to Louisiana and brought this tale of the loup-garou with them, which is how the lore of the Rougarou ended up in Louisiana, in the Americas. However, historians can't really decide if the loup-garou and the Rougarou are the same thing. Obviously, they sound the same, but they can't really decide if it's the same tale, because some people think that the Rougarou came from a curse of a voodoo priest, like I said earlier, and then the loup-garou is just a French thing that French parents told to their kids to make them listen. Like, oh, you want to go play outside by yourself? Well, I'm sorry, you can't, because there's a scary monster in the woods. But yeah, it was used as like a scare tactic, kind of. But some people also say that the Rougarou is just a large dog, and it bears no resemblance to the French loup-garou, and that people in Louisiana are just crazy. That's what the article said. French lore also says that Catholic churches would cast out people for not following Lent, like I said earlier. Specifically, it said when they wouldn't follow Lent procedures for 7 years straight and did not repent of their sins of not following, and then the church would turn them into a werewolf, which is where the tale the French parents got came from. And then apparently people in the 16th century would also just blame crimes on the loup-garou. It was like, oh, somebody broke into your house? Yeah, it's a Rougarou, or a loup-garou, case closed. They wouldn't actually investigate. They would just blame crimes on the loup-garou. People would capture other people that were suspected of being a loup-garou, and they would hold trials, similar to the Salem witch trials in Massachusetts. And they would, like, if the public agreed, which they usually did, that this person was a loup-garou, then they would be cast out, and usually punished, usually by death. But yeah, that's a little bit of the history there from France. Now, let's go into some sightings. Some of the sightings are really cool. A lot of sightings have been just labeled as like a hoax, like you're just making it up, or they're just misidentifications, like it's just a big dog, like I had said. But, yeah, a lot of people just don't, they think that the Rougarou is just, a whole big hoax thing, like it's not real. But I'm gonna read a few stories. These are all from Reddit posts of people sharing their stories. So I don't know how much truth is in them, but we're gonna see. And some of these stories are really cool, so let's get right into them. I believe I have 5 stories. Okay, so the first encounter, there's one story of the person who actually made the post, and then they also have a story from their stepdad, so we're gonna do those. So this is the author's story. I'm gonna read these all word for word so that I don't mess up any details and don't, discredit the authors. So here we go. It gets very hot down here in Louisiana during the summer, so to cool off, many of the residents in my town like to enjoy a boat ride down the river for swimming, fishing, tubing, etc. at various sandbars. My favorite sandbar was about a 7 to 10 minute boat ride with maybe 30 feet of sand between the river and the woods and swamp. My sister, my mom, my stepdad, and myself loaded up in my boat and cruised to the sandbar for a late afternoon catfishing trip. It's usually slap full of boats and people, but it was just us today. As the sun is going down, my stepdad is telling his bayou stories, claiming that he can summon the Rougarou. Out of curiosity, my sister and I gave him the go-ahead. We were both in our 20s, by the way. He takes a piece of driftwood in each hand and knocks them together twice, making loud echoing noises. A few seconds go by, and maybe 100 feet into the woods, something knocked back. We got out of there really quick. I don't think I've ever loaded the boat so quickly before. Never tried to knock for the Rougarou again, either. And then this is the stepdad's story. Maybe 10 years ago, he was fishing, and he was night fishing and set out some jug lines with one of his buddies. While they waited in the dark for the fish to start nibbling on their bait, they started telling their bayou stories. The particular bayou they had stopped to wade in wasn't wide at all, maybe 25 feet, with the woods and swamp on either side. So, my stepdad tells his buddy that if he hollers for the Rougarou will holler back. My stepdad then lets out a raw as soon as he finishes his call. Maybe 10 feet into the woods, the loudest raw came back right at him. He and his buddies left the bayou as quickly as they could. They went back to the camp and did not retrieve their jug lines until the following morning. Because of the proximity of the call, the loudness, and the sheer spook factor, my stepdad still refuses to go down to that particular bayou. Okay, here's the next story. So this happened to me a few years ago. I was visiting a friend's house in the Houston River area. That section of the river is pretty swampy, so we were frog hunting at night. It was a full moon, so it made spotting the bullfrogs easier. Super tasty, by the way. Anyway, we're wandering down by the riverbank, and then we heard a sound. All went quiet, not even the crickets chirped. We heard dozens of frogs dive into the water, and we knew that something was very wrong. Then came a distant growl, like something evil, from the other side of the river. We killed our Q-beams, which are spotlights, and then watched in the direction of the sound. What I saw chilled me to the bone. It was like a massive wolf with patchy black fur, yet no visible skin on its head, only a skull with empty eyes. It appeared to be locked onto other prey, so we shut our lights off and watched for a moment. Looking back, it was really stupid not to flee right then. It ran back into the woods and started running down the river, and we decided to dip out and get as far away as possible. Here is another one. This one is a longer one, so there's lots of details here. Okay. Growing up on Bayou Teche, I'm probably saying this wrong, deep in the Cajun country, I'd heard the tale of the Rougarou monster many times. According to those who claim a sighting, the Rougarou is a humanoid wolf-like creature that prowls our small settlements, snatching pets for food, and sometimes snatching people, too. Story after story of the Rougarou being seen right before he runs deeper into the swamp to hide. Townspeople like to speculate if there could be more than one monster. Growing up in our tired little bayou town, talk of the Rougarou was constant. I'd heard all the tales, but always believed them to be nothing more than a fun story, something to pass the time and make the long days a bit more interesting. Simply a campfire story that's told deep in the swamps of Louisiana by generations of Cajun French families. I know better now. I was a high school senior nearing graduation when it happened. Few in my town, and even fewer in my bloodline, had ever left the Bayou Teche. The vast majority of those born also died there. I longed for more, wanted out, and saw college as my ticket to freedom. Much to my family's dismay, I was accepted with a full ride at a state university 3 hours north. My hard work had finally paid off, and I had started spending my days dreaming of a life and future far away from the simple ways of the Bayou folk. One lazy afternoon after school, the sun was starting to drop, and I was laying back in my triage. I said that word wrong, definitely. Also known as a small flat-bottomed boat. I started looking at the clouds, listening to the chatter of the frogs, daydreaming while letting the slow bayou current push me downstream towards home. All of a sudden, I jumped up, startled out of my daze by a loud splash. I quickly looked at the water around the preog, trying to find the telltale ripples that would indicate a gator was close by. Gators often splash around our boats, but they're usually harmless. If we leave them be, they'll leave us be, well, for the most part. But this time I saw nothing but flat water. There didn't appear to be any gators nearby, and lots of creatures call the swamp home, so I started to relax again, deciding it was probably just a snake dropping from a tree into the water in search of food. But then I heard a fast series of staccato splashes and turned around to find myself face to face with what could only be a Rougarou. The water, chest high on me, came up to its hips, just below its waist. Its arms were abnormally long, misshapen and hairy, but its face is what caused me to open my mouth to scream. Large, soulful black eyes tucked under hairy ears and over a flat snout with two large, yellowed canine teeth hanging crooked out of its mouth. The Rougarou's hair was colored the browns and reds of the swamp, from the muddy brown color of the bayou water to the dark reds of the cypress tree roots. Before the scream could leave my throat, the Rougarou clamped its giant hand over my mouth, and no sound escaped. It then pushed me to the floor of my boat and pinned me down with its foot. I was terrified, certain that I was being snatched for its dinner, just as the tales that I'd heard all my life. Not gonna lie, I was scared out of my mind. I began to shake and cry, and I really wish that I could say I fought a valiant fight that day, but that's not how it went down. I was unable to move, frozen with fear, and couldn't even begin to fight back. As I lay there pinned down, I heard the familiar sound of my backpack zipper being unzipped. Then I felt a shifting of weight as I heard the Rougarous inhale deeply, one giant loud sniff. Most of my backpack contents were then strewn around inside the boat, landing everywhere. My calculus textbook banged me squarely on the forehead, drawing blood. I heard a crinkling sound as the Rougarou suddenly jumped up and leapt into the water with amazing speed and agility. Once it got to the shore, it took off running into the distance and was quickly shrouded by the thick swamp vegetation and was gone. I spent who knows how long just attempting to compose myself. I then rinsed my pants out in the bayou water, trying to wash away both the smell of urine and shame I felt at my cowardly reaction. I had finally stopped shaking and started repacking my backpack when I had a realization. There was only one item missing. The Rougarou had taken only one thing, my favorite study snack, the snack I was known for always having in my book bag, my extra-large, sharing-sized bag of M&Ms. It was gone. I eventually calmed down and made it home after the sun had set, and I let my dad holler at me for being late, and no one noticed the cut on my forehead. After that day, I gave up floating the bayou alone and never saw the Rougarou again. I went on to graduate high school, moved away for college, as I had planned, and getting out of the bayou has been everything I'd hoped for and more. I go back to visit my family once per year, usually around the holidays. When I go home, I still hear the old Rougarou tales being told, but now told to a new generation of Cajun kids. My family has never left the bayou to come visit me, but it's okay. I've come to understand some of the pull the swamp has on them. Okay, next story. As a young child in the care of my maternal grandmother, we were often told many Cajun stories to warn us not to wander too far from the care of our ancestral homes. My maternal grandmother was known to us by her Cajun French title, Ma Mère, I'm probably saying that wrong, followed by her middle name, Agnes. Even the decrepit parrot she owned, Roscoe, would shout her name, "Mamere, mamere," when we had need of her. My uncle once told me that she got Roscoe from a pirate who got her from a voodoo priestess in the Caribbean islands. Come to think of it, I had no idea where that bird came from, but I know he lived for over 20 years and had a more extensive vocabulary in French and English than most adults I knew at that time, and I swear that bird could put a hex on you if you crossed my mare. One of the many tales warning one of the many tales of warning told to me and my cousins was that of the Rougarou. This tale often told when we went to the camp. It's in parentheses, the camp. For the adults, this was an opportunity to drink, kick back, relax, hunt, and fish. For the kids, this was a chance to play in the marsh, swim in the bayou, tell stories, scare your cousins, ride in the boat, and if you were really lucky, one of your drunk uncles would let you shoot their gun. That's the most southern thing I've ever heard. It was a wild time. I'm pretty sure the first time I shot a gun was at the camp when I was about 6 years old, now that I think back on it. In order to get to the camp, you had to travel by boat. You'd ride in the car or truck to the boat launch, load up the boat with everything you need, and head down on the bayou. For my mare, this included a jar of dirt. For the life of me, I didn't know why she needed to bring a jar of dirt with her to the camp. I didn't know I didn't know until much later in life that my mare carried grave dirt with her, a ritual from several different practices, voodoo, Wiccan, etc., as a means of protection. As far as I knew, and still know to this day, my mare was a practicing Catholic and did not dabble in the arts. In fact, she strictly forbid this. So when we were camped, where we were camped was in Alisment. This is 25 miles southwest of New Orleans in, oh my gosh, these words, guys. Laforgia Parish, St. Charles Parish, and St. John the Baptist parishes. I'm saying these words all wrong, guys. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry if you're from Louisiana. The name of this lake translates from French to the Lake of the Germans. The area of this lake is about 19 square miles, and the average depth is about 5 feet, and the maximum is 10 feet. Oh, that's not that bad. My maternal uncle, Howard Jr., lived and made his livelihood as a fisherman on this lake. He passed away in 2004 from esophageal, throat, and lung cancer. He caught fish and alligators in this swampland and lake. He made a modest living this way. When I was about 7 years old, he killed a large female alligator, and only afterward did he realize she had a nest of babies. This is not typically done because you want the mother to be able to tend to her young to continue to produce offspring, circle of life, and all that. He took the baby gators in until they were large enough to fend for themselves, so they would not be eaten by larger gators. So being the responsible fisherman that he was, he offered us a baby alligator as a pet. No, this is not legal. Yes, we got in trouble with wildlife and fisheries. Yes, it was worth it. I mean, to me it was worth it. I was a child, and it was cool. I didn't even think my parents got a fine. They didn't want to have to write up all the paperwork for it, so they literally looked the other way, and we released it and pretended it didn't happen. This was before the internet and stuff, so it's not like we had records of all this stuff. And then a few months later, I had a pet alligator. I fed it straight from my hand, usually raw shrimp and chicken. We released it in a nearby bayou after we caught it, and it ate a lot of the duck population. 0 out of 5 stars, would not recommend if you live in a city. I grew up swimming in gator-infested waters. I do not have a healthy fear of alligators, snakes, spiders, and other things. What I do have is a healthy fear of the supernatural, Bigfoot, and the Rougarou. The Rougarou, also known as the loup-garou, which we talked about earlier, lives in the swamps of Louisiana. This shape-shifting creature is similar to that of a werewolf, and it has the body of a man and the head of a wolf. It differs from a werewolf because it does not require a full moon to turn. The monster is always within the man, and it emerges when feeding is necessary. When the call searches for the swamp, he turns. The Rougarou roams the swamp in search of children who have wandered away from their parents. Furthermore, he knows which children are willful and disobedient and will come in the night to snatch them in their beds. The story originated in the swamplands, marshy areas, and surrounding fishing communities located near these swamps and was meant to keep children from wandering into the swamps and boggy marshes where they could easily become stuck and succumb to drowning. I can personally attest to this as I have been trapped in the mud of the marsh once and began sinking and my cousin had to pull me out. As losses of habit become a problem, the story of the Rougarou changed, and he and his kind have been able to leave the marshy swamps and look for more prey. There are now projects in place to restore the marshes so that perhaps the Rougarou will return to their home. This is one Rougarou story that originates back to Catholicism, and I wonder if this is where Mimir got her story and combined it with other Rougarou stories she had heard. This story is about a Rougarou that would eat children who would not keep their promises made during Lent. Catholicism is pretty big in South Louisiana, especially in areas where Mardi Gras is celebrated. Mardi Gras is observed on the day immediately prior to Lent, which begins on Ash Wednesday and ends on Easter Sunday, making it 40 days long. This is supposed to be a time of fasting, and people typically give something up during Lent to represent the 40 days that Jesus fasted in the desert. In this version of the Rougarou story, when children falter and fail to keep their Lent fasting promises, the Rougarou comes and eats them as punishment for their lack of dedication to their faith. So whether you're misbehaving, wandering, where you shouldn't be, eating meat on Fridays during Lent, or who knows what else, you better watch out. Because the Rou's gonna get ya. And then our last story here. My grandmother's farm was situated on 15 acres of land north of Hayden, Alabama. It was several hours from our home, and we would make the drive there a handful of times a year, mostly in the summers. I can remember the anticipation I would feel as we drove up the long driveway to find the modest house, which my grandfather Elmer had built with his bare hands, perched atop of the hill. Picturing it now, I see the rusted tin roof, the weathered porch, and the dilapidated barn that stood out back. As a child, none of that mattered to us, obviously. We spent our days roaming the rolling countryside, swimming in a nearby creek, and playing on the old oak that grew beside the house, whose branches were so large that they scraped the ground. The fields surrounding the farmhouse were no longer fertile, providing ample space for us to properly conduct the adventures we had concocted in our minds, and were surrounded by the dense forests of the Alabama countryside. I always cherished this time I spent with my grandmother. When we were inside, she was always singing to us, telling us stories about when she was a girl, teaching us how to make things out of sticks and string, and passing down the type of random wisdom that only a grandmother can. Unfortunately, I never knew my grandfather, and my grandmother said he died in a hunting accident when I was very young. I heard so much about him from her and my parents. However, that I felt like I knew him. He was a very large man, strong as an ox, my grandmother would say, who would farm the fields from sunup to sundown without so much as a whisper of complaint. My grandmother, her family of Cajun descent, had met my grandfather at school in Louisiana, and the two had moved out to this land, left to them by Elmer's uncle to start a life together. My mother had been born in this very farmhouse. I respected my grandmother more than any person on the earth, but she was not without her quirks. The strangest of which was her insistence that we follow 3 specific rules as long as we were there. I can remember her pulling my sister and I close, kissing us on the forehead, and gently reminding us about them each time we arrived, her frail, wrinkled hands cradling ours. Don't leave food outside, no singing past dark, and most importantly, never go into the woods. She never explained why they were important, only that they were important. The rules were something we rarely questioned. Grandma said to follow them, so we did. Simple as that. The first 2 were pretty easy. I wasn't much of a singer, and we didn't have food outside unless my grandmother had given it to us. But the third was a bit more challenging. Her property was surrounded by woods on all sides, with a buffer of several hundred yards between the house and the tree line. And my sister and I were often tempted to go exploring within. We'd ask permission, stating our ages as proof that we were responsible and could take care of ourselves. Without fail, she would always reply, "The rules are for your safety. You mustn't break them." I only remember one evening when my sister was only 3 or 4 years old, when she accidentally left some food outside. We had been eating bologna sandwiches on the back steps. I remember we both liked ours smashed down and cut into little squares. Having finished mine, I had gone inside to get something to drink, and she followed me, leaving her plate behind. Later that night, we were all in front of the fireplace, curled up in Grandma's lap under one of her large quilts, telling stories and laughing when we heard something scratching at the back door. Oh, sorry. That was supposed to be, suspenseful. We were laughing until we heard something scratching at the back door. I'm bad at telling stories, guys. Okay, anyways, immediately I felt her body tense underneath me, and she shot a glance over to my father, who was sitting on the floor. He tried to keep his face blank, but I could see the worry creeping through. "What is that, Grandma?" I asked. "Probably just a raccoon," my father said, starting to stand. "Let me do it," Grandma said. My father picked us up from her lap and gently placed us on the floor as she made her way to the back of the house. A few moments later, she walked back into the den and sat down. She was holding my sister's empty plate from earlier. When my sister saw the plate and the look on my grandma's face, she burst into tears. "It's okay," she said, hugging my sister tightly. "Let's do our best not to do this again, okay?" Later that night, when everyone was in bed, I crept out from underneath the covers and tiptoed to the back door. It was open. I don't think the house had air conditioning, and the doors were left open with the screen doors closed to keep the bugs out. I was old enough to be curious about what had happened earlier, and young enough not to be scared about what I might find. There was a single bulb above the back door that cast a narrow beam of light that illuminated the back steps. On the top two steps, bathed in the eerie light of the dim bulb, were dozens of long black hairs. After the food incident, I became a bit more aware of the things that happened around the farmhouse and started to have the notion that my grandmother was hiding something. I wasn't sure of what it was, but whatever was at the back door was part of it. The next year, my sister and I found a dead deer about 50 yards from the tree line. I think it was a deer at least. Its head was completely missing and its body was completely mutilated. Even at my young age, I knew no other animal had done that. When I told my grandmother about it, rather than being shocked, she acted as if it was a commonplace, saying to stay away from it and my father would take it elsewhere. The next year, there was one night when we were all awoken by something banging around in the barn. In the morning, when we went out to investigate, it was clear that someone had vandalized it. One of the barn doors was completely ripped off the front, and everything inside was torn apart. Like someone was looking for something. Grandma said it must have been thieves looking for iron to scrap, but what thief would go looking in a barn for iron in the middle of nowhere? Later that same trip, I was playing in the old oak. Oh my gosh, in the old oak. I noticed my sister had stayed rather close to the tree line. The next thing I knew, I saw my father sprinting across the field towards her. When he reached her, he grabbed her, threw her over his shoulder, and sprinted back toward the farmhouse. He scared the crap out of her, so I guess that's why she was crying hysterically, but my father would never say why he had to get her away from there so quickly. There were other incidents like that over the years, but what they meant is, in some, I had never figured out. The last time I visited my grandmother's farm was the summer I turned 16. It was the summer my grandmother finally told me about the secret she was keeping for so long. At 16, as most kids are, I was pretty defiant. I still had great respect for my grandmother, don't get me wrong, but I was growing a bit tired of the seemingly arbitrary nature of her rules, especially the third one, never go into the woods. What, was I 5? But by that time, I had basically run out of things to do at the farm and wanted desperately to explore the woods, which I had been barred from entering for so long. So one day, I did it. It was an exceptionally hot July day, and I decided to follow the little creek that wound through the corner of her property into the woods. The foliage was dense and unforgiving, blocking out much of the sun, and providing much-needed respite from the heat. I kicked off my shoes and began walking along the creek's sandy bank, losing myself in the hum of the water as it rushed around various sticks and stones, and the chatter of birds and insects around me. When I had gone far enough that I couldn't see the tree line, I noticed that, aside from the sound of the water, I couldn't hear any sounds of birds or insects any longer. The forest had become deathly silent. The air was unnaturally still, creating an odd sense of uneasiness within me. Never forgetting my grandmother's warnings and believing I had somehow worn out my welcome, I hastily turned back to head toward the farmhouse. I stopped when I heard the crack of a branch far off in the distance behind me. Afraid to look back, I started walking again. A few steps later, I heard it again. It was the sound of someone or something moving through the dense underbrush in my direction. I turned slowly, and what I saw scared the living hell out of me. In the distance, I saw the silhouette of some lumbering beast walking towards me through the forest. It was tall, over 6 feet, and looked mostly like a man, except there appeared to be ears sprouting from the top of its dark head. I could see its eyes, large and yellow, shining at me, even though the rest of its head was shrouded in darkness. I stumbled backwards, falling into the sandy water, and then turned and tore through the woods, sprinting over rocks and pine cones and briars in a mad dash to escape whatever was coming for me. I didn't even bother grabbing my shoes. When I made it back to the farmhouse, I slammed the outer door and locked it shut, and then ran inside to find my grandmother. I found her sitting at the kitchen table preparing some beans for dinner. I was a mess. I was covered in sweat and wet muddy sand, and I'm sure my eyes showed my terror. When she looked up at me, she could tell immediately that something had happened. "Were you in the woods?" was all she asked. "I'm sorry, Grandma, I didn't know. There was a thing, I stumbled over my words, not exactly sure what to say to her. Instead of being angry, she looked at me in sadness with sadness in her eyes and motioned for me to come and sit beside her. My foot was bleeding, and when she had bandaged it, she began to tell me the story. The loup-garou is what you saw. It's also called a rougarou outside of Louisiana, I believe. My mother used to tell me the tales about a monster, part man and part wolf, that would roam the swamps around her home and snatch children who had strayed too far from their parents. A children's fable, surely, which I never really believed to be true, yet the story still scared me. It wasn't until we moved here to the farm that I realized it wasn't just a story. Your grandfather, on one of his hunting trips, found the carcass of an animal that had been ripped to shreds, beyond recognition. We hunted the animal, and he hunted the animal he believed had caused it, thinking it was a bear, and finally tracked it to its den deep in the forest. It was no bear, child. Your grandfather described it as a man, with dark, long hair covering its body, yet with the head of a wolf, just like the stories. The two fought, your grandfather prevailing, but not before gravely injured. Several hours after he came back that night, a sickness overtook him. He wailed and moaned in his sleep that night, and in the morning his eyes had sunken low into his head, and the hair on his body started to grow long and deep and black. A few hours later he was gone. I guess he had realized what was happening and didn't want to endanger me. That thing you saw in the forest, child, that was your grandfather. My heart was broken, having lost the only man I ever loved. I didn't know how to cope with it. I would sit out there on the back steps and sing old songs my mother used to sing to me, and I would see him. It would creep out of the forest to listen, only coming close enough to show me that he was there. I would leave food out on the back steps at night, and he would come and eat, always licking the plate clean. I don't think the transformation was fully complete then. Your grandfather was still there inside, somewhere. I hoped he could come out somehow, and come back from whatever he had become. Then I started to hear the howling and find the dead animals. That's when I knew your grandfather was gone. The rules now, as you can see, are meant to protect you, child. He is drawn to the food and to the singing, still remembering how I comforted him during those early days. And anything that goes into the woods doesn't come out alive. I'm thankful you're here. This must be your last trip here, child. Now that he has seen you up close, he will have a taste for your blood, and he won't stop until he drains every last bit from your body. Your grandfather has several guns here, but I dare not to use them, and I caution you to heed this warning. I see the look in your eyes. If you did succeed in killing him, I fear you would face the same fate as your grandfather. If the old tales are true, he who kills the Rougarou eventually becomes one. That was our last sighting story. I guess this video is probably going to be a little longer than the other 50 state cryptid videos because the Rougarou is a very popular cryptid, but I really enjoyed researching this one, guys. And if you want me to find some more sightings, maybe we can do another video. But I hope you enjoyed. And the Rougarou is in a lot of pop culture. I'm sure a lot of you have seen Supernatural and NCIS, where he appears in both of those. But yes, definitely a very popular cryptid. And then next week, we're going to continue the series with the Specter Moose from Maine, which is where I'm going to college, so I'm pretty excited. But yeah, I really hope you guys enjoyed, and I hope that the longer video was worth it, because those sighting stories, especially that last one about the grandpa, those were really cool, and I enjoyed reading those a lot. So yeah, that's all I have for today, and I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.